Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. You don't belong here. The words cut through the silence of the nearly empty library, sharp enough to make other readers look up. The boy clutched his worn notebook tighter, rainwater still dripping from his sleeves onto the scratched wooden table. He'd been coming here every day for 3 months, finding sanctuary among the books after school. The security guard towered over him, uniform crisp despite the late hour. Library closes at 6 for non-members. You're not registered. Behind them, fluorescent lights flickered, casting harsh shadows across shelves of knowledge the boy was desperate to absorb. The librarian watched from her desk, concern in her eyes but silence on her lips. A tall figure in a rain-soaked jacket paused near the biography section, a book half opened in his hands. From beneath damp hair, Keanu Reeves observed the scene unfolding, his expression shifting from casual interest to focused attention. What happened next would change more than just one evening in a forgotten corner of the city. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. The boy's name was Miguel, and this library had become his only chance at a future. At home, electricity came and went with his mother's paychecks, and internet was a luxury they hadn't known in years. Here, between these walls lined with books, he could study, could dream of becoming the engineer he'd sketched out in his notebook margins. The guard's voice had shattered that fragile hope, each word a reminder that some doors weren't meant for kids from his neighborhood. He began gathering his soggy papers, eyes fixed downward to hide their dampness. "It's policy," the guard continued, voice flat but loud enough to echo through the reference section. "Non-registered visitors must exit by 6. No exceptions." His hand rested on Miguel's shoulder, not quite pushing, but promising to if necessary. The rain lashed harder against the windows, as if nature itself was emphasizing the cruelty of forcing the boy out into the storm. Miss Chen, the librarian who had silently allowed Miguel's after-hours presence for months, hovered at the edge of her desk. Her fingers twisted around her lanyard, job security wrestling with conscience. "Perhaps we could make an allowance just for tonight." "The weather," she ventured, voice trailing off as the guard's expression hardened. The city had recently privatized library security, and the new company was known for its rigidity. She had 3 kids of her own to feed. The guard checked his watch. "Rules are rules. Library hours are clearly posted." 2 other patrons, college students with expensive laptops, exchanged uncomfortable glances before returning to their screens. They had memberships. They belonged. Miguel's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his thin frame seeming to collapse inward. The mathematics textbook he'd been studying, content 3 grades above his age, remained open on the table, a problem half solved in his careful handwriting. Keanu had come seeking shelter from the downpour, a momentary detour before his appearance at the mayor's private fundraiser 6 blocks away. He hadn't expected to find himself witnessing this quiet drama in a neighborhood library that city officials rarely mentioned in their speeches about educational excellence. He'd grown up with a single mother too, had known what it meant to count pennies. The book in his hands, a biography of Nikola Tesla, suddenly felt meaningful in ways beyond its content. Miguel shoved his notebook into his backpack, fingers trembling slightly. The equations he'd been working through would remain unfinished tonight. His home had lost power yesterday morning. The chances of it being restored by now were slim. Tomorrow's math test would have to be faced without preparation. His dreams of scholarships, of breaking cycles of poverty, seemed to dim with each step toward the exit. The security guard moved slightly to the side, creating a clear path to the door while thunder crashed outside. Nature's punctuation to this moment of small but profound injustice. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. Excuse me. Keanu's voice cut through the tension. Quiet, but carrying the unmistakable resonance that had delivered countless memorable lines. He stepped forward, closing the Tesla biography with a gentle thud. The guard's posture straightened instantly, recognition flickering across his face. The transformation was immediate, from authoritarian enforcer to starstruck fan in the presence of celebrity. Miguel remained frozen, backpack half-zipped, uncertainty in his eyes. "I couldn't help overhearing," Keanu continued, approaching with that distinctive walk, equal parts humble and purposeful. The fluorescent lights caught the silver strands in his beard, evidence of the years that had passed since his most iconic roles, yet did nothing to diminish the commanding presence he carried. "I was wondering about the library's membership policy." His gaze moved between Miguel and the guard, resting longer on the boy, noting the careful handwriting on the visible page of the notebook, the advanced textbook. Ms. Chen stepped forward, professional instinct overriding her earlier hesitation. "Membership is free for city residents with proof of address and ID," she explained, her voice gaining strength. "For minors, a parent's signature is required." The unspoken reality hung in the air, bureaucratic barriers that might as well be walls for families living on society's margins. Keanu nodded slowly, absorbing both what was said and what remained unspoken. The systems of exclusion hiding behind reasonable-sounding policies. "I see," Keanu said, placing the Tesla biography on the edge of Miguel's table. "And what's the policy on guests?" The security guard shifted his weight, professional protocol warring with the desire to accommodate a celebrity. The two college students had abandoned any pretense of studying, phones discreetly angled to capture what was unfolding. This wasn't part of the evening's script for anyone in the room. "I can sign in a guest on my account," Keanu continued before the guard could respond, reaching for the pen in his jacket pocket. "I'd like to do that for—" He looked at the boy, an invitation to introduce himself. "Miguel?" the boy answered, voice barely above a whisper, recognition dawning in his eyes. Not just of celebrity, but of something rarer, genuine intervention on his behalf. The guard's expression tightened, caught between strict policy adherence and the reality of who was now involved. "For Miguel," Keanu finished, his smile reaching his eyes as he addressed the librarian. "Would that be possible, Ms.?" The rain continued its assault on the windows, but inside, the atmosphere had transformed. Miguel's shoulders straightened slightly, hope rekindling. Ms. Chen moved toward her computer terminal, sensing the shift in power dynamics, wondering if this moment might permit what her own courage hadn't. "Chen," she supplied, name tag catching the light as she moved. "That would normally be acceptable, Mr. Reeves, but—" Her eyes darted to the guard, whose jaw had set into a hard line. The uncomfortable reality remained. Celebrity or not, rules were rules in his worldview. "The library is closing in 15 minutes, the guard stated flatly, "and guests still need to leave at closing time." His hand remained near his belt, a subtle assertion of authority even in the presence of fame. The implicit message was clear. This momentary intervention wouldn't solve Miguel's larger problem. Tomorrow would bring the same barriers. Keanu nodded thoughtfully, his gaze moving around the library. The flickering lights, the worn carpeting, the signs of institutional neglect that spoke volumes about city priorities. Then he looked at Miguel's notebook again, at the equations written in careful script, at the determination that had brought this child here day after day. Something shifted in his expression, the passive observer becoming an active participant in this small but significant drama. "What if," he said slowly, his voice carrying that distinctive cadence known to millions, "we're thinking about this problem too narrowly?" He turned to face the full room now, the guard, the librarian, the college students, and most importantly, Miguel. The boy clutched his backpack strap, suspended between hope and the hard lessons life had already taught him about the permanence of obstacles. What followed would transcend the moment, reaching beyond one rainy evening in a forgotten library to touch on questions of access, opportunity, and what we owe to the dreams of children. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. "Education isn't a privilege," Keanu said, his voice filling the space between bookshelves. "It's a fundamental right." The words hung in the air, simple, yet profound. When I was growing up, libraries were sanctuaries for me, places where your background didn't matter, just your curiosity. He moved closer to Miguel, creating a visual alliance that wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The guard's expression flickered with uncertainty. "I understand rules," Keanu continued, addressing the guard directly now. "But I also understand their purpose. This library exists to serve the community, especially those who need it most." His hand rested lightly on Miguel's shoulder, a gesture of support that carried the weight of his public persona, the man known for quiet generosity rather than the trappings of Hollywood. What purpose does it serve to send this young man out into that storm? The college students had abandoned all pretense now, phones recording openly. One whispered to the other, the words "going viral," just audible in the quiet space. Ms. Chen stepped fully away from her desk, emboldened by the actor's intervention. "We do have discretion for exceptional circumstances," she offered, professional vocabulary providing a bridge toward solution. The security guard's radio crackled with static, an intrusion from the outside world that seemed to emphasize the bubble of tension they all occupied. "I was going to attend a fundraiser tonight," Keanu said, his gaze moving from the guard to Ms. Chen, "where people will spend thousands on dinner to discuss educational initiatives." His smile held a trace of irony. Yet here we are, about to deny actual education to someone who's proven they want it badly enough to sit in a drafty building every night. He gestured toward Miguel's notebook, where complex equations stretched across the page. "Have you seen what he's working on?" The guard hesitated, professional distance warring with natural curiosity. Ms. Chen moved forward and glanced at the notebook, her eyes widening slightly. "This is advanced calculus," she said, professional assessment overriding her caution. "Miguel, what grade are you in?" "7th," the boy answered, voice stronger now, Keanu's presence giving him permission to claim his own accomplishments. "I want to be an engineer. Design bridges, maybe." Simple words carrying the weight of generations of hope, of a future imagined despite circumstances designed to limit such imagination. "My company needs engineers," Keanu said, the statement dropping like a stone in still water. The guard's posture shifted, the implications of interfering with not just a celebrity but a potential path forward for this child suddenly apparent. The power dynamic had completely reversed, celebrity transforming into something more meaningful, advocacy with purpose and direction. The rain's intensity had diminished outside as if nature itself was pausing to listen. "Here's what I propose," Keanu said, reaching for his wallet. He extracted not the expected cash that celebrities use to solve problems, but a business card, which he handed to Ms. Chen. "I'd like to establish a fund for extended hours at this library and ensure that students like Miguel have priority access." The simplicity of the solution belied its profound implications, addressing the systemic issue rather than merely the immediate circumstance. The guard's radio crackled again. He reached to silence it, his authority diminished by each passing moment of this unexpected confrontation. "That would require administration approval," he said. But the words lacked conviction. Everyone in the room could sense the transformation happening, policy giving way to purpose, rules to reason. "I'll speak with the mayor about it tonight," Keanu replied, subtle reminder of his access to power, deployed not for himself, but for a child he'd just met. He turned to Miguel, crouching slightly to meet his eyes directly. "In the meantime, would you show me what you're working on? I've always been fascinated by engineering." The invitation wasn't charity, there was genuine interest in his voice, recognition of the boy's potential that transcended circumstance. Miguel looked from Keanu to the guard, then to Ms. Chen, whose nod provided the final permission he needed. Slowly, he reopened his notebook, fingers tracing the equations he'd been struggling with before interruption. "I'm trying to understand structural integrity calculations," he explained, voice growing more confident with each word, "for earthquake-resistant designs." The college students exchanged glances, witnesses to something more compelling than any scripted drama. A future-changing course in real time, barriers falling before their eyes. "It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it." Three months later, the same library hummed with energy despite the late hour. The sign outside had been updated. Extended Hours Learning Center, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Inside, every table was occupied, predominantly by students from the surrounding neighborhood. Miguel sat at what had become his regular spot, surrounded by engineering textbooks. A small plaque on the wall nearby read, "Reeves Foundation Education Access Initiative," understated in its design but profound in its impact. Ms. Chen moved between the tables, no longer constrained by closing times or restrictive policies. The former guard had been reassigned to day shift, replaced in the evening by a community coordinator whose job was to assist rather than exclude. The mayor, sensing political opportunity in the viral moment that had emerged from that rainy night, had fast-tracked the approval process. What Keanu had initiated with a simple question had expanded into a comprehensive program reaching 12 libraries across the city's underserved neighborhoods. Miguel looked up as the library door opened, a familiar figure slipping in quietly. Keanu, dressed casually in jeans and a dark jacket, avoided drawing attention as he made his way to the boy's table. This wasn't his first return visit. He'd been appearing regularly, sometimes bringing colleagues from engineering firms, sometimes simply checking on progress. The relationship had evolved beyond its dramatic beginning into something more substantive. Mentorship with genuine investment in outcome. "How's the bridge design coming?" Keanu asked, sliding into the chair opposite Miguel. The boy's eyes lit up as he turned his notebook, revealing intricate sketches and calculations that showed remarkable progression from those first equations 3 months earlier. What had begun as intervention had catalyzed into genuine possibility, potential unlocked by simple access. "I incorporated the feedback from Dr. Lin," Miguel explained, referring to the structural engineer Keanu had introduced him to, about the tension distribution. His mother had found steady work at one of the companies Keanu had connected her with, employment that offered stability, benefits, and, crucially, predictable electricity at home. But Miguel still came to the library every evening, drawn by the community that had formed around this space. Around them, other success stories were unfolding without fanfare. A girl practicing coding at a nearby computer. Twin brothers collaborating on a science project. A middle-aged woman taking online courses to complete her long-deferred degree. The space had transformed from mere building to ecosystem, nurturing aspirations that had previously found no soil for growth. The college students who had witnessed that first night occasionally returned to volunteer as tutors, their understanding of privilege permanently altered by what they had observed. Miss Chen approached their table, coffee in hand for Keanu, a small gesture of the ongoing appreciation that needed no grand expression. "The foundation called today," she told him quietly. "3 more libraries approved for the extended hours program." The pilot's success had proven contagious, spreading beyond their city as other communities recognized what was possible when barriers to education were systematically removed rather than merely lamented. It was never about the hours, Keanu reflected, watching Miguel return to his calculations with the focused dedication that had impressed every mentor who met him. It was about the message those hours sent. His intervention had mattered not just for its immediate effect, but for the ripples it created, challenging the assumption that some children's futures could be casually limited by arbitrary restrictions. Outside, rain began falling again, gentle against the windows. Inside, warm light illuminated dozens of faces bent over books, screens, and papers, minds engaged in the fundamental human act of reaching beyond current circumstances toward possibility. Miguel paused his work to look up at Keanu, the hesitant boy from that first night replaced by a young man growing confidently into his potential. "Thank you," he said simply, words inadequate for the transformation but offered nonetheless. Keanu shook his head slightly, deflecting personal credit as was his nature. But the truth remained, captured in the library's new unofficial motto, painted above the entrance: "Education is not a privilege. It's a right." Sometimes it just takes one person willing to stand in the gap between policy and purpose, between what is and what could be. Wow, what a story. If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.